Mesechta Megillah, Daf Chav Gimel Amud Beis 23b. If you have an art scroll Gemara, it's 23b1, top line of the page. Topic we've been learning until now has been about the Haftarah reading. David, you remember how long is the minimum the Haftarah has to be? How many psukim?
Has to be at least
21.
21.
20 psukim. Why 21 verses? Because since the Haftarah, when it was started as an institution, as a substitute for the Torah reading.
You have at least
Because the
5.
Greeks outlawed Torah reading, but they did not outlaw, they didn't get the memo that the prophets are part of the Torah. And they started the Torah reading of the Nevi'im instead. Later on, after the Jewish victory during Hanukkah, and Jews once again can read the Torah, they still kept the Haftarah. They didn't remove it. They learned their lesson from Atachin Antonu during Ma'ariv, where they instituted it because the Jews could not afford wine. Jews were poor, and then they got rich, and they took it away, and then they got poor, and they put it back. And they kept it always. They kept the Torah and the Haftarah. The Haftarah, the one who receives Aliyah, must also, the one who reads Haftarah, the prophets, receives an Aliyah, in order not to say that the reading of the Haftarah of the prophets is of a equal footing of that of the Torah. So therefore, they receive an Aliyah to the Torah and for the Haftarah. Which Aliyah do they receive? Do they receive the last Aliyah, or do they receive an 8th extra Aliyah? And that's a discussion of our Gemara right now.
23b.
23b1.
Okey-dokey.
Does the maftir, the one receiving the final, the Haftarah, do they receive the final Aliyah, or do they repeat the last 3 verses, or do they have a different Torah reading? I don't know if you remember, but we went through 5 different reasons why they repeat the last, on a regular Shabbos, we repeat the last 3 verses of the Torah reading of the week and don't read the Karban Musaf of Shabbos. Either because it's 2 psukim, or because it doesn't say Ben Moyadoi at its correct time, or because a Shabbos, you're allowed to add aliyahs with no end, or because the Haftarah has to be something thematic together with the Torah reading. That's why we always have the Haftarah almost similar to the Torah reading. If it's a song of the Torah of praise to Hashem. Or because there's no kapara, there's no karban chatas, a atonement offering, as brought on Shabbos. On Yom Tov and Rosh Chodesh there is, but on Shabbos there isn't. And when we read the Torah reading of the Haftarah of the Maftir, it is for an atonement, because a karban, a sacrifice, is there mainly for atonement. So therefore, on Shabbos, the Maftir, the final Aliyah that we read, is the last 3 verses, the last three psukim of the weekly part of the weekly Torah reading. However, we do not read a new parsha. On Yom Tov, on holidays, we read a different thing, a different topic, something to do with the karbanos, with the sacrifices of the day. So we must have 21 verses. The Gemara asks, we should have 24 verses if there's 8 aliyahs. Why is Haftarah meant to be only 21 verses? And the Gemara answers, because the whole reason why we have Haftarah is to remember the Torah reading, right? It's similar to the Torah, so you're remembering the Torah reading. So you're going to say you have to read an extra 3 verses from the prophets as part of the Haftarah to remember corresponding to 8th aliyah, which is only there to equate the prophet reading, the reading of Nevi'im with the Torah, and therefore I should have in honor of the Torah, I'm reading, so a person's receiving an aliyah, and now I should therefore add 3 more psukim of Navi. The whole idea here is to honor the Torah, not to honor more than Navi. And therefore, you only need 21 verses of the Haftarah and not 24. So I'm going to pull up over here on the screen the Haftarah from this week's Parsha. We're holding out Parshas Tetzaveh, and we have a Haftarah for the Parsha. Let's count how many verses are in this week's Haftarah. I put it up here on the screen. It's in Ezekiel chapter 43. It starts with the words Ata ben Adam, you son of man, and describing the building of the Beis HaMikdash, the third Beis HaMikdash. It starts from verse 10, so chapter 43, verse 10, and it continues through verse 27. How many psukim are that? Verse 10 through verse 27? 18.
Oh.
18 psukim.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have 21 verses in this week's Haftarah, Parshas Tetzaveh.
Mhm.
We have 18 psukim. I'm going to bring up soon on the screen what the Gemara will bring another example, but there are many Haftarahs, and later in the Mesechta there's a list of them, which are less than 21 psukim, 21 verses. So let's read the Gemara here inside. The Gemara asks a question. 23b1, top line of the page. Matzkefla Rava. Rava asked the question. You have a parsha called Parshas Tzav. Tzav, how many psukim does it have? Very easy to remember. Has Tzav psukim. Tzav is, Tzadik is 90, Vav is 6. Parshas Tzav has 96 verses. Here it is. Now the Haftarah of Parshas Tzav, Maskal for Rava challenges a brisa that the Haftarah has to have a minimum of 21 psukim, 21 verses, corresponding to 7 aliyahs of the Torah reading and 3 verses per aliyah. V'arei oileseichim safu d'lehavian esrim v'chad. You have the Haftarah reading on Parshas Tzav. If you look at it, Torah reading for Tzav, go to the Haftarah for Tzav. For some reason, it's showing this week's Haftarah. Don't even know why. Okay, the Haftarah for Tzav. It's in Jeremiah, in Yirmiyahu.
Oh. We haven't got there yet.
I don't know. It's a little bit of a conundrum because it is showing us the wrong Haftarah. Let's do it again. Tzav Torah reading. All right, let's go to 7th aliyah.
Gee, let's see here.
I go to the next Haftarah.
That's so comes out good.
And once again, it shows us this week's Haftarah.
It's the boo-boo.
It's something, yes, it's a bug on the system.
The air is humid.
Okay, but correct. At any rate, unless this is a different Chabad custom, that is possible. But I don't think so.
Oh, wait. No, but please don't. These have turned text follow Chabad custom. Oh, for me, there will still be an error of turns of Chabad custom due to a bug, I see.
Look, I think it's showing us this week's Haftarah. Okay, so I'll show it to you on the screen where it is. It's in Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah. Find me, Jeremiah chapter 7. Here we go. It starts from verse 21 over here. Kol Yamar Hashem, says Hashem, Tzvaka is Lord of hosts, the God of Israel. Elisechem safal zivchechem yichlu basar. Your burnt offerings have piled up upon your other sacrifices. All your different korbanos have piled up and have not accepted them. It starts verse 21. It goes through verse 34. How many is that so far? 21 through 34 is
21.
14 verses. And then it continues into the next chapter. Chapter 8 to verse 1, 2, and 3. And it ends with the words, Ne'um Hashem Tzavakos, so says the Lord of hosts. It's 14 plus 3 is 17.
I did this math class again.
So there's 17 psukim, 17 verses in the Haftarah. Shalom Aleichem, Reb Mektura Baruch, Shalom Aleichem, Yossi. There are 17 verses.
Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi. Thank you.
In the Haftarah of Parshas Tzav. In this week's Haftarah, there were 18 psukim. Parshas Tzav, there are 17 psukim. Seemingly, the Haftarah has to have 21 psukim, 21 verses, because since it's a substitute for Torah reading, so therefore, you should have 21 verses, 3 psukim, 3 verses per aliyah, and there's 7 aliyahs. Says the Maskef Rav asked the question, the Haftarah of Parshas Tzav, which starts off with the words Olisechem, Safu, and there are only 17 verses, not 21, and still we read it as a Haftarah. Answers the Gemara, Shiny Hassam, the Salikinyana. Over there, it is different. The reason why you can have a Haftarah that is less than 21 verses is because that is a complete topic. Over here in Yirmiyahu, in Jeremiah, once you have verse 4 is a new topic. If someone sins, they could do tshuva, it's a different topic than they're talking about the karbanas, which are not favorable to Hashem, brought in the Beis HaMikdash. And if you complete a topic, then you don't have to have 21 verses. For this reason, on Purim, let's look at the Purim Torah reading over here on the screen. On Purim, before we read the Megillah, we read the Torah on the day. The first aliyah is verses 8, 9, 10. That is, how many psukim? 3. Second aliyah is verses 11, 12, 13. It's 3 psukim. Third aliyah, it's verses 14, 15, 16, and that is 3 psukim. So we only have 9 verses in the Torah reading, and we know that a Torah reading has to be at least 10 verses. Responding to Tiferes Adibras, 10 Commandments, so we learned previously. So when we read the Torah itself, not just the Nevi'im, the prophets, but the Torah itself, if we read a complete subject, which is a war of the Jewish people with Amalek, altogether it's 9 verses, and it's fine because it's a complete topic. So if it's all right when it comes to reading the Torah, then it's definitely okay when it comes to reading the Haftarah. So even if a Haftarah is less than 21 verses, but if it is a complete topic from beginning to end, then it is okay, then it's fine to read. You don't need the entire Torah reading. You don't need 21 psukim in the Torah reading. Continues the Gemara. Are you trying to tell me that Haftarah has to always be 21 psukim unless it is a topic, and when it's a complete topic, it could be less than 21 psukim, like in this week's parsha, or it's 18, or Tzav, or other Haftarahs which are less? Shmuel bar Abba said, Zimnin Sagin, very uncommon terminology, but many times he says, Hava Ka'imna Kamei Rabbi Yochanan. I stood in front of Rabbi Yochanan. This is when they are reading the Torah. And whoever was getting the aliyah, whoever was reading the Torah, they will read the Torah. Now the rabbi of the shul, of course, is Shmuel bar Abba, and they would read the Torah. As soon as they would hit 10 verses, 10 psukim, he would say, Amar Lan, he would tell them, Afsiku, stop. After 10 psukim, you cut the Torah short. Imagine you had a rabbi like that. You would cut the Haftarah short. So if the great Reb Shmuel bar Abba, he would cut the Haftarah short after 10 verses, after 10 psukim, and he did it many times, even if it wasn't the end of a topic, we tell them stop after 10 psukim, regardless of where it was. So we see Rabbi Yochanan was not particular that you should read 21 psukim, 21 verses for Haftarah. So why do we say that Haftarah must be at least 21 verses? If we see Rabbi Yochanan would stop the Haftarah in the middle, even if it wasn't a complete topic. And the Gemara gives a very interesting answer. And this is a lesson that many people could take especially when you're speaking in public. Amar Lon, Shiny, Gemara answers, Makom sheyesh turgaman shiny. In a place where there is a translator, it is different. Nowadays, it's not so common. I've never actually seen it anywhere, where after every single pasuk, after every verse, there's somebody explaining the pasuk, explaining the verse. Many people did not know Hebrew at that time, and they would, of course, come to shul, and they would want to learn. So after the pasuk, after the verse was read, there would be a translator, someone who would repeat the verse into Aramaic, and many times add their own words of explanation. So every single verse, the pasuk was actually double plus a little more than double.
And even actually, the Eretz actually don't do that because the Eretz have many old countries.
I never heard of it. Many places, after every aliyah, there's like aliyah roundup or aliyah trivia. After every aliyah, 7 different times throughout the Torah portion, you stop and explain what happened in the past aliyah. But between every pasuk, every verse is not very common. But that's the way it was normal back then, especially with many people who were ignorant and that did not know how to even read Hebrew. So they translate it and they explain it. And Rashi over here explains that therefore it will be too burdensome for everyone to sit through the reading of the Haftarah and the translation of the Haftarah for so many verses. So therefore it can be reduced to even less than 21 verses. The Meiri and the Ran actually add another explanation, and they say that if the one reading the Haftarah reads a pasuk, it's one time. The translator translating is like a second verse, and after 10 pasukim, 10 verses, you already have 20, and then he would repeat the last one again in Hebrew to end off with the Hebrew as well. So the bracha, the blessing, should go straight on the pasuk, on the verse. So therefore, you would end up with 21 verses that way. So it wasn't directly 21 verses of Nach, but it was 21 times verses of Nach were being either said or translated. So therefore, you also came up to the number 21. So when there is a translator, translating into the language of the time after every pasuk, it's different. You don't have to burden the congregation, the entire shul, to stay there any longer. Like the Tani of Tachlifa bar Shmuel, as Rav Tachlifa, the son of Shmuel, taught. This teaching that Haftarah must contain at least 21 verses only is applicable when there is no translator translating the verses. In a place where there is a translator, then you are able to interrupt, to stop the Haftarah even earlier. Why did he wait until 10 psukim? Perhaps because, like we said, it's 21 psukim, like the Ran says. Perhaps also because the minimum Torah reading is 10 psukim, 10 verses. So he wants to have at least a minimum. But we learned over here 3 different halachas. One, if there's no translator and the topic is not finished, you have to read at least 21 verses. Two, if there is no translator, but a topic is shorter than 21 psukim, you could read it as long as it's longer than 10 psukim. And third of all, a place where there is a translator translating every pasuk, every verse, so then it's sufficient to read 10 psukim, and you don't need to read more because the translator himself takes up time. And of course, a very important lesson to learn is not to take up people's time needlessly. If you look over here, the words were Zimnin Sagin. Shmuel bar Abba says, many times I was in front of Rabbi Yochanan and he interrupted the one saying left Torah. He stopped him after 10 verses. If you want to learn something, one time is enough. Seeing Rabbi Yochanan doing this once is sufficient. Why does it have to say, many times I saw Rabbi Yochanan doing this? This is a question Chaim asks. The answer he gives is, you might think to yourself, okay, I don't have to read 21 psukim, 21 verses if there's a translation going on, simultaneous translation, not simultaneous, right after, concurrent translation going on. However, if I want to, I could. That would have been after only one time. Maybe that day, I don't know, Shabbos ended really early that day. Not sure. Could have been like, Leningrad in the winter where Shabbos ends at 1, 2, 3 p.m. It might have been something like that. But if it happened many times, from there we see that it wasn't a one-off situation. It was a halacha that Rabbi Yochanan was doing and teaching, that in a place where there's a translator, you don't have to read more than 21 psukim, the 21 verses. So that's halacha nowadays. Every haftarah is at least 21 psukim. The majority of haftarahs are exactly 21 psukim. Some of them are less if they complete an entire topic, like this week and other weeks. If there's a translator, which is not common today, it's all right, then you don't need to read 21 verses, 10 verses, and repeating the last verse is sufficient. Another interesting thing is, this is only on Shabbos that you need to have a haftarah that's at least 21 verses. But in Yom Tov, we have only 5 aliyahs on Yom Tov. So therefore, in order for haftarah to correspond to the amount of aliyahs that are on Shabbos, so if every aliyah is at least 3 verses, so you have 5 aliyahs, so on Yom Tov, haftarah only has to be 15 psukim, 15 verses. It doesn't have to be 21 verses. Another interesting thing we could see from our previous Gemara was the taina, the complaint, which they had on right inside the Gemara. Yaakov Mina'ah Abaya told to Rav Yosef. Abaya is a student of Rav Yosef, and he's telling him all the halachas of the reasons why we get 3 aliyahs on Shabbos and 3 aliyahs on a weekday and 5 on Yom Tov and 7 on Shabbos. And Abaya tells him, my time, what's the reason you never told me anything until now? What does that mean? What do you see from there? That a student has every right to claim, to demand from the teacher, teach me. And more than that, a teacher, if you know some Torah knowledge, you have an obligation to teach it to a student, to your talmid and to your students. And if you don't, the student can tell you, how dare you? How could you not teach me? You told me this. There's something that I'm supposed to know, and I don't know it. There's some Torah which there is to know. If you know something, you could be a navi, you could be your own prophet, and you could teach somebody else. And if you don't teach somebody else something that you know, people can have a valid claim to you. How is it that you have something and you're not teaching it to me? Right? As it says, Abaye said to Rav Yosef, what is the reason until now the master did not explain us the matter this way? So you are definitely able to demand a teacher to explain. There's one more topic. I'll just do the halacha l'maaseh, go through the opinions. Can a woman and a child receive an aliyah? The plain Bryce over here said that a woman or a child can be one of the 7 people who receive an aliyah. A child means under bar mitzvah. A Rambam, but it says a woman should not read in public to respect the congregation, saying that she knows the Torah better than all the men in the shul. The Rosh says this only applied back in the day where the first person and the last person would say the bracha on the Torah reading, but now that every person says a bracha on the Torah reading, a woman cannot receive an aliyah during shul. The Pirush HaMishnayos of the Rambam says that a child may receive an aliyah on a Shabbos if 3 adults already received an aliyah, and they're counted toward the 7. There's a city in Tunisia called, I think it was Jerba.
Yes. Or she's in Jerba.
So not Jerba, it was a certain city where it was only Kohanim in the city.
Yes.
It was in Jerba. Levim were not allowed to live in the city. Levim were not allowed to be there.
It's off the coast of Tunisia.
Right. So there's a city where it says a Levi cannot be there overnight. If they would stay there overnight, there was a curse from Ezra that would pass away. Actually, a Israeli journalist went there and he didn't believe in any of the stuff and he stayed there. He wrote an article, you see, I'm alive and well. And 1 month after he wrote that article, he actually unfortunately passed away. So in this city, where everyone in the city was a Kohen, when it come to Birchas Kohanim, to blessing the Kohanim, all the Bechorim, the firstborns of Kohanim, will wash the hands of everyone else because there's no Levim to wash the hands of the Kohanim. And instead of the and there's no Yisraelim, there's no one there to bless. Maybe they would, the whole entire show would turn around and bless all the Tunisian Jews who are outside of the city, not in the city. So if you're a city of only Kohanim, and now you're calling up people to the Torah. You have Kohen, Levi, Israel. What do you do?
Kohen.
Everyone's Kohanim there. I mean, nowadays you could have it that, let's say if you have a family simcha or something, and it's only Kohanim there, only Leviim there, or something like that.
And in the days when Kohanim actually were in their own cities, so we had door after door in one place, Kohen, probably had the same problem.
Right. You have, I think it was, what was it, the Shalah, or maybe one of the Shalah's grandchildren. You had, I think it was a Levi. And whoever it was, they had one daughter, one son, I think, and 14 daughters, something like that. And all the daughters married Kohanim, and the one son was a Levi. And they would have their own minyan. He would wash all of their hands. It was a whole special way of doing things. So if the city was only Kohanim, Nevudaram actually writes that all Kohanim, that a Kohen should receive the first 2 aliyahs, and then the women and children, if they're Yisraelim, can receive the rest of the aliyahs. Well, the Ram writes this. The Beis Yosef writes in Halacha that many people on Shabbos add aliyahs, the 8th, the 9th, the 10th, aliyah. So they say a child can have an extra aliyah, but not one of these 7 aliyahs. In practice, children and women do not receive an aliyah today for some of the reasons we outlined, but the question is about maftir. Can a child receive maftir? So initially, children were always allowed to receive maftir. Nowadays, a child is allowed to receive maftir, but it's better to give to an adult. But if a child who's old enough to learn Torah and understand Torah, he is allowed to receive maftir, because since it does not have the same level of holiness and sanctity as the original Torah reading.
If there's nobody to read the Torah, would the woman read the Torah, or is it actually because I'm coming to see where even the
Right. So in that case, a woman would say that, and a man will repeat. So the man is reading the Torah.
Oh, I see. I was wondering how it works.
Yeah.
And so she would be behind the Mesechta.
Correct. Behind the Mechitza would be. Yeah. Probably remove the bima next to the Mechitza.
Now,
If you have a shul and there's only Israelim there, and the only Kohen is a child, but he's 12 years old. So the Chaim Nishabrura actually writes, we call him for the Aliyah of Kohen. We give him the Aliyah. The Magen Avram says, he learns it out from a pasuk, from a verse, that we're only commanded to honor adult Kohanim, because only an adult over 13, his avodah, his service in the Beis HaMikdash is valid. And the reason the Torah says, "V'kidashtoi," why do you have to honor and sanctify to a Kohen? Because he brings karbanos in the Beis HaMikdash. Being as a child cannot bring a karban in the Beis HaMikdash, there's no need to honor him, therefore no need to give him the first aliyah. Therefore, if the only person who's around is a child, the only Kohen around is a child under 13, we do not give them aliyah. And the custom the Mishnah Berurah brings is that regardless, the custom today is to allow a child only to receive maftir.
What is the covenant Tzibor reason? I think there's a covenant Tzibor reason to exclude actually children from having aliyah.
From children?
Is it
the same thing, that only a child knows how to read and not an adult? It will be the same exact thing. Right, so that's the halacha today. So a child can read, only aliyah that could receive is maftir. We will continue. John.
It is actually a funny way of putting it. Allow, but sages forbidden. It's all forbidden or abundant. And you're phrasing it in kind of a funny way. One person here. Okay, 3 people. Hello. Minsky. Okay.
We'll continue with the Kuntres Umaayon. We're all okay. Let's make this a little large. Okay. You have the crushim, the beams. You actually have what's also, this is the Mishkan, the tabernacle, which we're learning about in today's parsha, last week's parsha. take a break for 1 week. I mean, you see a part of the parsha and the next two parshas as well. How it's being built, the tabernacle, the Mishkan in the desert, and the bones were made out of these beams. Beams were made out of solid wood, cedar wood, and they were covered in gold. They were bottom had silver sockets, 2 of them. There was a hole drilled in the middle, which a large pole connected them, and on top these sockets would go connect them one to the next, like this. This is how the krashim, the beams of the Mishkan were. In Hebrew, the word peresh comes from the word sheker, which means falsehood, the same letters. The falsehood of the world, the sheker, has to be changed and made into keresh, a beam, support the bones of the Mishkan. More than that, the type of wood is called shittim. Shittim is cedar wood. Comes from the word shtus, which means foolishness and folly. And we have to have the same extremism that we'd use to do a avera, to do something not good against Hashem, to do something good. These are called the kloim. These large poles, beams around had kloim, had curtains all around. And that's why they said, if the beams fall on him, they crush him. Get it?
Oh.
If the hooks and the pole and the curtains fall on him, they claw him. Called claim. So these are, let's say, this is a general outlook of what the here's a wall. Here's a wall of the Mishkan, what it would look like. That's what the entire Mishkan would look like over here. All these wooden beams covered in gold with the sockets, the brackets on top, the poles connecting it, plus one long hole inside throughout the entire thing, which connected all of them, and silver foundations underneath, silver sockets underneath. This is approximately what the Mishkan looked like. So to continue, with where we're holding in the Kitzur, the summary of the second chapter of Maamar Chavzayin, Maamar 27. Wisdom, curiosity, isn't logic; it's beyond logic. And you might think Chachma means a Chacham, someone who's smart, logical, talking about not the logic, but the power of logic. Mayan, a wellspring, a stream, something like this. It comes from deep in the ground, and from this level of a person's soul, which is the chachma of their soul, that's to have the power to withstand any hardships, any test, and to sanctify their name for Hashem. Chachma, what is chachma? Koyach is pashtus elabina, the power of koyach ma, the power of what? Nothingness. I am non-important. Ma is tapkusa la keser. Ma connects to keser, which is the crown above chachma and bina. Ma de chachma mashke nachla shitim shahapech hashtus lumazel hashtus kedusha v'azan agasa b'chol nyan v'api das to kedusha. The wisdom of the level of chachma, which is called the Umaayon of chachma, the depths of the person, the essence of the soul, waters the nachal shittim, the valley of shittim, as it says in the verse called Kuntres Umaayon. A stream goes out from the house of Hashem and waters the valley of shittim. The stream, it says, goes on the level of chachma of their soul, essence of their soul. It leaves the house of Hashem, it leaves the essence of Hashem, and it waters the shittim valley. Shittim comes from the word shtus. Shemahapech shtus, it turns over the foolish, the folly, of this world, the shtus to kedusha, to folly of holiness, which we explained. We brought the example of the professor who said that the only way to solve the ills of society is to make a revolution. And when eventually All right, and once he later on, and he became firm on about Shuvah, and he came to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe says, now you have to make a revolution just in the other way. And then, if you have the foolishness of holiness, all your conduct will be according to the rationality of holiness. Any of you remember Rabbi Munitz?
Yes.
So, I'm going to conclude with this story. Munitz from here from Pittsburgh, many years. This is already a story after he left Pittsburgh. It's Sukkot, of course. We do Chaim, go around, shake a lulav and esrog with as many Jews as possible. And there's 7 days he could shake a lulav and esrog, and afterwards can't do it anymore. Then on Shmini Atzeres is no longer do you make a blessing on lulav and esrog. Now his children, they were after a whole Yom Tov of Sukkot and Karn Heights, which if anywhere in this hemisphere to celebrate Sukkot is definitely over there, where there's no sleep for 8 days and 8 nights, or the entire Yom Tov of Sukkot. Every night there's dancing in the morning and the day or during the daytime, whether it's from Sayim or all the other things that are done. And there's some Chastera, there's unbelievable, and it's Hoshana Rabbah, the last day of that you could shake a lulav and esrog. And they already the davening on Hoshana Rabbah is very long, and they already davened, and they already had their Yom Tov meal. You have a Yom Tov meal on the afternoon of Shmini of Hoshana Rabbah. And after the Yom Tov meal, you have 2-3 hours left till Yom Tov, till Shmini Atzeres. So Chastera comes in that night's Hakafas to starting another 2-day Yom Tov. And every normal person, is probably getting ready for Yom Tov in one way or the other. But they said to themselves, look at this. We have now another 3 hours this year where it's possible to do the mitzvah of lulav and esrog. We have to do as much as possible every moment. It could be even one Jew didn't shake lulav and esrog yet. We got to go. It's like here in Pittsburgh, you walk down Murray Avenue and Forbes Avenue and find many Jewish people. Over there, you have to take a bus or a train or a taxi. And it's late on Erev Yom Tov, and they said, we have to go on Mivsaim. So a bunch of people together, one is named Owen Wagner, and one is some of the Munich boys say, that's it, we got to go on Mivsaim, we got to find more Jews to shake lulav and esrog with on Hoshana Rabbah late afternoon, when it's almost Yom Tov. And they jumped into a taxi, and they took a taxi up to Ocean Parkway. Ocean Parkway, it's one of the big thoroughfares of Brooklyn. Many people have aptly renamed Ocean Parkway to Roshan Parkway because essentially the entire parkway from Avenue A to Avenue Z, all the buildings along both sides are full of almost exclusively Russian Jews. All the way up to Brighton Beach.
Russian Parkway.
It's called it. And they went into the first Russian building where there's many Jewish people, and there's not a lot of time left to Yom Tov, less than 2 hours. And they walk on the first door. They shake lulav and esrog with as many people they meet. And one of the first houses they knock the door. And as they're leaving, the person asks them, "What's your name?" My name is say Shalim Munitz. Shalim Munitz. It's Munitz. I remember I remember hearing the name before. Somewhere called up, my father might know. The person over there calls up the parents. It's Munitz. Wow, that was their maiden name. Ended up being they were actually first cousins. Rabbi Munitz's father had a brother, right, who unfortunately got stuck in Russia, and all of their children, right, were Russian Jews, which didn't, not their fault, but they assimilated and everything. And Rabbi Munitz, he lost contact with his brother many years ago. He thought he was killed in the Holocaust, or maybe he had no idea. And these details are fuzzy, but it's all written up. But it ended up being that these people were actually their first cousins, or the parents were first cousins.
And as the children.
And they ended up, reconnecting to an entire side of the family. And of course, introducing them to Yiddishkeit, et cetera, just because on Erev Yom Tov, they didn't say, okay, let's get ready for Yom Tov. We only have 3 hours left. But instead, they use what's called Shtus Kedusha, foolishness of holiness. And they said, okay, we have 3 hours left, we could shake Luv and Esrog with another Jew. Let's do it.
These were the
And-
descendants of their brother. These were the descendants.
Right, the descendants are Munitz's father's, or Munitz from here, his father's brother. These were his children and grandchildren that they met. So Rabbi Munitz's first cousin, plus his children, and the two who met originally were second cousins, but then the first cousins met. And you see, whenever you go in an extreme way of Kedusha of holiness, it also it helps. I have a first cousin of mine, he's a shliach in the city of Berlin, Germany. And he goes in such a way called Shtus Kedusha, foolishness of holiness.
This is your cousin, you said.
First cousin. For example, the first, I went with him to a certain country on a trip, and he was with his whole family, and the lines are very, very long for customs. And he says, "We're shluchim of the Rebbe. We are diplomats," and he took us all through the diplomatic line. Skip the whole line. Or shliach of the Rebbe. Who's a diplomat if not that?
Everybody's got. Everybody's got.
Exactly. And so this, when he first moved to Berlin, and he didn't really know anyone when he first moved there. Now, Baruch Hashem, I'm saying he has many shluchim under him, schools, many buildings. One building they completed was just $20-something million, no, $27 million building. Hundreds of Jewish children in school and yeshivas, and packed in multiple Chabad houses, etc. Like a very, very happening Baruch Hashem place. And so the first year he was there was a Jewish festival in Berlin run by the Gemeinde, the government-sanctioned Jewish community. And so he went there and he set up a table there, do mitzayim, literally tefillin, meeting people, tefillin, giving out Shabbos candles. That's literally what he did. All right, and he was there an entire day. I think 10 hours he was there, from when it started till it ended. The next year, he said to himself, "Listen, I'm already, more well known in the city, more respected in the city. It's not befitting for me to be tabling myself, and I should stop people, and it's not befitting for me. Maybe I'll find someone else to do an hour here or an hour there. I should be, sitting, meeting with dignitaries on stage." And then he thought to himself, "Am I a shliach of the Rebbe, or am I here for my own honor, to promote my own name? I'm a shliach of the Rebbe. What do you expect?" He says, "If I'm a shliach of the Rebbe, so then you definitely, without a doubt, you have to look what the Rebbe would expect at this time." And he said, "Okay, that's it. I'm going to go specific, just to prove it, I'll be at this table the entire day." And he made a table this year again. And it was a full day and over 8 or 9 hours, he was tabling, and now it was already the end of the festival.
It's your cousin in Berlin.
My first cousin in Berlin, talking about in the late 90s. Right? And at the end of the festival, everyone's already gone home pretty much and just wrapping up. And he's ready to pack up his table. And at the end of the day, and he's exhausted. And then someone comes over to him, an American person. He says, "Are you Rabbi Teichtel?" He says, "Rabbi." He says, "Yeah, everyone here calls me Rabbi Teichtel. That's the way they say it in Germany." And he says, "What are you doing here?" He says, "Everyone in the city is talking about you. This Rabbi Teichtel, what's the story?" And he tells them what he is. We're shluchim the Rebbe, there to help meet every Yid and love and help every Yid. And this person named Peter meant to become very, I want to meet you, and they met later on, became extremely close and connected to each other. This Peter, a very wealthy person, he ended up donating the mikveh, I think €500,000 to build the mikveh. Beautiful, beautiful mikveh, like state of the art. As a matter of fact, when this Peter, later on, I think his wife, he was divorced, he got married again. And he got married at a Jewish wedding. They brought down Rabbi Teichtel. He flew him down to Monaco or one of these Greek islands. They rented out a hotel. He flew him down for a Shabbos. And again, the Shtus Kedusha was there. It's very, it's becoming more in style in the American hotel system, but not so much in not so much in America, much more in Europe. You have that when you walk in the hallway of the hotel, the lights turn on. Otherwise, the lights are off. And on Shabbos, that's a very big issue.
Yeah.
So the rabbi is there. There was the chuppah was on Friday, and it's a big Shabbos. It was all made kosher in honor of the rabbi. The rabbi was there. The rabbi officiated the wedding, and he's Shabbos in the hotel with this large group, and they're waiting for the rabbi to come to the large. They made a Friday night meal and a Shabbos day meal. Everyone's waiting for him to come. What the problem was him and his wife and a baby. They opened the door of the hotel room. Suddenly the lights went on. You realize they're stuck in the hotel room. They can't leave. So they closed the door, and they didn't really have any food with them either. And they spent the entire Shabbos in their hotel room with the baby. They couldn't go out. They couldn't go to the daven. They couldn't go to the meals. They couldn't meet anybody. Everyone's wondering, what's with the rabbi? Is he okay? He's gone. He's disappeared the entire time. But only after Shabbos came out, he after Shabbos finished, he left his hotel room. And Rabbi, are you okay? He says, yeah, I'm hungry. I'm starving, but whatever, okay. And it was a talk of the place. All these hundreds of people all came for this big thing. Can you imagine somebody would not leave their hotel room the entire day? Just, you couldn't get someone else to open the door for you. You couldn't this, you couldn't that. Ultimately, people respect and people look up to when you do things entirely committedly, and when we go in the ways of the Rebbe without any without any calculations and any thoughts, and follow the ways of a Torah till the end. So with that, we will conclude.